Hi, this is Corey Johnston, and today's lesson is going to come from the 9th chapter in the book of Ecclesiastes. And the first foundational fact we need to understand is that the writing of Ecclesiastes was very much motivated by Solomon's awareness that he was at death's door. So these are his most mature musings, and they are reflective of a life by any objective measure well spent, yet he has cause for regrets, and he is haunted by a mystery of what is the meaning of life. So this book belongs in the genre of Old Testament wisdom literature, and rightly so, and he addresses many things related to death, such as the inevitability of judgment and the inescapable and universal lot which all creatures who may experience life are unable to escape the fate of death. So in some sense we are all equally destined to the same state of nothingness. And there is now in previous discourses I've described the outlook as espoused by Solomon as agnostic rationalism. I don't think the first of those categories is wholly fair, because agnostic, as we understand the term, is an intellectual acknowledgement as if God exists, but without an active interest in their moral character developed throughout this life. So, but more to the point of the passage, there are, even though death is equal and universal and inescapable to us all, there are a variety of attitudes and approaches with which we can take to it, which can hopefully better our fate in that inescapable and dreaded lot, which is a source of fear for the unbelieving, yet a source of comfort and hope for those who believe in the promise, as espoused throughout Scripture. And the opening verse reads, "For all this I took to heart, even to search out all this, that the righteous and the wise in their deeds are in the hand of Elohim. No man knows whether love or hatred awaits him." So this is a prudent caution to not presume on his grace. Just because he's blessed you in this life doesn't mean he's going to bless you in the afterlife. There's no equitable measurement between the extent to which we have been blessed in this life versus that which awaits us. And it would be folly for those who have enjoyed the blessings, and Solomon very much did, but he retained a mindfulness of the giver and refused to, for the most part, exalt the gifts over the giver. "It is the same for all, one event to the righteous and to the wicked, to the good and to the clean and to the unclean, and to the one slaughtering and to the one not slaughtering. As is the good one, so is the sinner. The one swearing as the one fearing an oath." So an awareness of our dreaded destiny of death, it can instill an unrighteous doubt as to the worthiness of living a moral life, in that no matter how good we are and no matter how much good we do, we cannot prevent the decay and death, which is the equal lot of the righteous and the wicked. But even though the righteousness and wisdom is powerless to prevent the dreaded outcome, it can make living in the world in which we live more enjoyable and better. And slaughtering is a sacrifice, so most ancient religions sacrificed animals, and and the Hebrews were certainly no exception. It wasn't until the full and final atonement of the Messiah that Christianity eternally eradicated what was once a majority practice amongst the religions of the world. "This is an evil, and all that is done under the sun. There is one event to all. Truly the hearts of the sons of men are filled with evil, and madness is in the hearts while they live. And then to the dead." So this isn't a wholly optimistic prognosis of the human heart. He's aware of its tricky and deceitful nature. I believe Jeremiah 17:9 compares the human heart as prone to deception. We who wield it often submit it to the wrong spirit, and we have the potential to be led astray by by what we feel in our heart. So the implicit admonition is not to trust or rely on one's own heart, but have faith in the one above, who can who rules our hearts and is more powerful than and is a more reliable source of security. And once more, he reiterates the universality of the phenomenon of death. He says there is an evil that is done, all that is done under the sun. The key word is the three-letter word all, by which we understand. And in the earlier verse, he says it is the same for all the same word once more. So death is inescapable, and there's nothing we can do to prevent it, but there are things we can do to prepare for it and hopefully benefit from it. And that's the juxt of much of this passage. So the fourth verse reads, "But for him who is joined to all the living, there is trust, for a living dog is better than a dead lion." Now, a dog is alternately an animal of affection and a term of derision, but with its combination with lion we understand to be the mightiest beast in nature, so it's better to be a living, inferior species than one who was superior while living but is now dead. So the inference of this passage is life is better for the living than the dead, and he builds on that more fully in the next verse, which reads, "For the living know what they shall die, but the dead know not, nor do they have any more rewards, for the remembrance is forgotten." So there is an ambiguity and not an inconsistency, but an ambiguity on the Jewish doctrine of the resurrection. It was not universally affirmed. The Pharisees affirmed it. The Sadducees denied it. But Solomon, curiously enough, now the doctrine is a cardinal tenet of Orthodox Judaism, and we take it for granted. It's the central concept of Christianity. But there was some mystery as to its reality until it was fulfilled by the Messiah. So even though David affirmed the doctrine in his 16th Psalm, his son seemed to have not benefited, or at least in the inference in this expression is that he did not benefit from knowledge of the resurrection to the extent that his father David did. So that's something we all have to work out for ourselves. The faith in the resurrection can give all the imperfections and inconsistencies and injustices of the world a better meaning. Also their love and their hatred and their envy have now perished, and they no longer have a share in that is done under the sun. So every emotion that's attached to us doesn't outlive us. So whatever whether it's bitterness or resentments we accumulate, or bitterness we brew, or fond nostalgia for the world we live, it's going to mean nothing in the eternity, because it's going to be evaporated along with the human body if we don't have faith in the resurrection. "Go eat your bread with joy and drink your wine with a glad heart, for Elohim has already approved your works." So once more in the book of Ecclesiastes, we find Solomon affirming that there is nothing unrighteous about enjoying what we are entitled to enjoy from the few fruits of our labor. And as long as we keep Elohim in the forefront of our minds and hearts, then this is not idolatry. So it is a delicate balancing act, but it is possible. And let your garments be white at all times, and let your head lack no oil. Now, in the book of Revelation, we understand the righteousness to be of certain angels to be marked by garments of white. White is symbolic of purity, and therefore heavenly connotation with the symbolism of the color. And see life with the wife whom you love all the days of your futile life, which he has given you under the sun, all your days of futility. For that is your share in life, and in your toil which you have labored under the sun. So he's saying that the exchange between the inequities and infirmities and imperfections and inconsistencies and injustices of the world in which we inhabit, the wife is compensation for that. So a godly wife is to be treasured and sought, and Solomon has much positive praise to say about the ideal wife in Proverbs 31, and plenty of more harsh words to seductresses and adulteresses and other passages. But he does once more affirm that the righteousness of enjoying one's married life, which they are by right entitled to. All that your hand finds to do, do it with your might, for there is no work or planning or knowledge or wisdom in the grave where you are going. So once more, the dead end of life as all we know it is implied in this passage. So he's saying there's there's literally no purpose in expounding any energy or investing any effort in planning for the eternal future of which we are destined to not escape, but are at the mercy of death inescapably. I again saw under the sun that the race is not to the swift, nor the battle to the mighty, nor even bread to the wise, nor even riches to men of understanding, nor even favor to men of knowledge, for time and chance meets with them all. So no matter how clever or talented or fortunate we are in this life, or no matter how swift we will not win the race, no matter how mighty we will not win the strength of contest of strength, and there is nothing we can do to avoid, but there is things we can do to prepare. But it is once more implicitly universal and inescapable. It is the lot of all humanity. It is the great equalizer, and it is the fact of life with which we must contend with and work out the meaning of our life in light of the afterlife. For even man does not know his time, like fish taken in an evil net, and like birds caught in a snare, so the sons of man are snared in an evil time, when it comes down on them suddenly. So like a thief in the night is another metaphor or analogy which comes to mind. So the suddenness of death, we can be, now most of the days we wake up not thinking that we could die that day, but it is always in the realm of the possible, rarely plausible, but it is a reality with which we must contend with, and we can. The ideal is to die in your sleep at an old age. No one likes to be died before prematurely to their appointed purpose, and we can hinder that purpose, and we are no better than fish or another inferior species which is enslaved, I believe, the birds. And also I saw as wisdom under the sun, and it is great to me. A little city, and a few men in it, and a great king came against it, and besieged it, and built huge siege works against it. So whether this parable is an instructive illustration intended to communicate didactic truths in a manner that is more lifelike than explicit precept or general abstraction, so that is a literary device which we find throughout many of the Gospels. The Savior employs them, and we find this throughout the Old Testament, and Solomon is once more using it. So he's using a story of relatable and possible, but not quite literal, events to convey spiritually significant truth. And there was found in it a poor wise man, and by his wisdom he saved the city, yet no one remembered that poor man. So the reality of a besieged city would have been something more relatable to an ancient audience than our own. It was a fact they had to contend with, and the strategies conceived by an anonymous and obscure citizen who was humble in rank and station, yet the whole entire city was indebted to him for his survival, yet they neglected to pay him homage or his due. And I said, wisdom is better than might, but the wisdom of the poor man is despised, and his words are not heard. So he's acknowledging a barrier which prevents the underclasses from having the fullness of their intelligence realized. There are barriers and loops they have to go through which may be preventing their utilization of their resources and gifts. The words of the wise, spoken calmly, should be heard rather than the shout of a ruler of fools. So throughout the Proverbs and Ecclesiastes, he often communicates the concept that foolishness by its very nature is heard frequently. By its very nature, it's self-promoting, it's self-aggrandizing, arrogant advertising of self. And little does the fool know that all they are advertising is just how foolish they are. But the fool must act in accordance to his nature, and foolishness by its nature is self-promoting. But he's saying one of the proverbs which immediately springs to mind is 12:23, the prudent man concealeth knowledge, but the heart of fools proclaimeth foolishness. So by the opposite antithesis, the words of the wisdom are few. The words of the wise are few, but each one counts and each one packs a punch. And to paraphrase Plato, the fool talks because he has to say something. The wise man talks because he has something to say. Wisdom is better than weapons of conflict, but one sinner destroys much good. So he's acknowledging the ripple effect and the chain and cause and effect of chaos, which even a single stupid, simple-minded sinner can do. It can potentially have a ripple effect, which with ramifications in the city in which he lives. But as a ruler, he acknowledges that wisdom is a more effective resource to be utilized than weapons of war. And Solomon did promote his national interest through the path of commerce and diplomacy, whereas his father David was a warrior. They were different rulers for different times, but they were aligned with the purpose of the Almighty. And the tragedy of Solomon is that after him, the United Kingdom ceased to exist. But that's another story entirely, and that's all the time we have for today. Thank you so much. Tune in next time. Bye-bye.